Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tabor Talk podcast, YouTube channel, Tabor Talk. I'm your host, Michael Tabor. So, getting right into this, I am going to do a recording podcast, if you will, on a topic that is very, very important and interesting. I talk about a lot of things on this podcast. I mean, everything from politics to philosophy, psychology, popular culture. I have fun. I have Tabor Talk, what makes a joke great. I play my guitar. Really, everything under the sun. And I talk a lot about religion. I talk about personal things. I talk about my NDE, my near-death experience, my relationship with my family and mother and father. Really, everything. So this is right up there in terms of importance. I am going to do a podcast right now on the book of Job, Theodicy, the book of Job, the problem with evil, the book of Job, God and Satan have a bet. So before I start, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play a podcast that dealt with this. One of my favorite podcasts, by the way, The Very Bad Wizards, with Tamler Summers and David Pizarro. Tamler's a philosopher. He teaches out University of Houston. Tamler teaches right here, Cornell. He's a social psychologist. And they are the best. I mean, I've been listening to these guys forever. I've listened to every single episode, and I love these guys. So they are academics, right? So Tamler's a philosopher, Dave's a psychologist, but yet they mix in popular culture. So I love that blend. Very serious, heady, academic shit, and then they have fun, popular culture stuff, and they're funny. These guys are so hilarious. I mean, really, if you ask me what is the greatest podcast, I love Joe Rogan. I'd have to say The Very Bad Wizards. It's just, I can't even begin to tell you how much I love these guys. So anyway, I'm going to get right into it. Oh, and I just want to say that well, let me tell you a little bit of background about me. I got really sick in February, March, April of 2014. I've done a few video recordings about this. I'm not going to expound here. And I had a terrible accident in August of 2014. I'd fallen from an embankment and I broke my back. And my elbow was off. I was in the hospital for 28 days. I died in the hospital and I came back. I had an NDE, near-death experience. And then when I got out, I'm skipping over a lot because I've already covered that in previous podcasts. But anyway, I continued months after. I continued to have all these symptoms and problems, neurological, neuromuscular issues, real bad. And for the longest time, like more than a year, a couple of years actually, I actually got a definitive diagnosis in November of 2018. I was looking at the most horrible diseases, the horrible stuff like ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, right? Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, MS, Parkinson's. And I was preparing for death. I was preparing for the worst, not only just death, but the worst way to die. It's so sad. And just thinking about that. So right now, to this day, I'm almost out. I still have a lot of problems, but pretty much ALS and all that has been scratched. So anyway, going back, why I'm talking about this, and I bring up the book of Job and how I got into it. Is I actually had a friend who is Orthodox. He's a Christian Orthodox, and he knew what I was going through. And he suggested that I read the book of Job. Like, we were talking back and forth about the problem with evil and suffering. Like, why am I sick? Why are 9 million children die in terror and agony before they reach the age of 5? Just open the paper. It's horrible. Natural disaster, all this stuff. And he said, well, what helped me was the Book of Job. Read it, and it was the worst thing. It was like it turned me so off. I was open to all this stuff, and I thought maybe they would provide some comfort or insight into the problem of evil and suffering. It just made it so much worse, and it really pushed me away from Christianity. I mean, right now I'm a universalist, so I embrace all faiths, all the Abrahamic monotheistic religions, including Judaism, Christianity, Islam, the Eastern traditions, and Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, and then even the primal religions, Buddhism, of course. And so I'm in a really great spot right now. I am so close to God. It's just I spread out. Universalism. I'm not bigoted like I used to be, like Christianity. It's Jesus and that's it. And obviously that's not the case. I embrace Christianity, but it's just more complicated. So anyway, let me just get right into it. Dave Bizarre is the same thing. Dave Bizarre was very, very religious growing up, and I believe it was Latter-day Saints. I'm not sure what he was. I don't know if he was Orthodox, but the book that turned him off was the Book of Job. Isn't that funny? My friend tells me to read the book that will turn you off Christianity. So, okay, let me get right into this, and I will provide some commentary in between or afterwards. This is one of the best podcasts I've heard in years. Enjoy this. Okay, I got to get my facial ID here. Here we go.
The Book of Job, as you said, we've gotten requests to talk about this, and honestly, I've been wanting to talk about it for a while, and I think that just because it's a little bit longer than, say, Ecclesiastes. Maybe
they did Ecclesiastes like 4 months ago. That was awesome, too.
It is up there with one of my favorite books of the Bible.
Yeah.
And just a great piece of literature.
Exactly. Yeah.
It kind of blows my mind that thousands of years ago, somebody sat and thought about the problem of evil in the same way. Like, this is something that, I don't know about you, but I can relate to. It's very clear. It's a very lucid
I'm going to have some chocolate. Don't mind me.
I've always loved it because of that, the problem of evil, the Theodicy. Yep. That's probably what made me lose my religion. But I also just...
See? Made me lose my religion.
love the poetry, and I love how fundamentally...
Although I'm a universalist.
Yeah.
It is. It's something that just leaves you hanging.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that I love about it the most. In the same way that Ecclesiastes, and it's one of those, the three wisdom books, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and Book of Job.
Yep.
And even though this one has a plot, and it's a fairly easy to follow plot, and Ecclesiastes doesn't really have a plot, it leaves you with the same kind of questions. Both, do we accept whatever moral there is, and what is the moral, and is there even a moral, and why? Like, how can you reconcile certain aspects of it with other aspects of it? It doesn't fit together, and in that way provokes so many questions in anybody who reads it. It's interesting that you said it's a really great expression of the problem of evil. I don't know if it is or not exactly. It definitely offers a solution to the problem of evil, but the problem itself isn't as fleshed out. So I wonder why you say that.
Yeah, so the problem, like, maybe I specifically mean the problem of evil as framed in this particular way, which is believing that a just God exists. Why does evil happen to a good person? Mm-hmm. And the reason I think it's a very good way to describe that problem is that it gives us a little prologue that makes it very, very clear, right, where Satan, the adversary, goes to God, and God tells him about Job, and he is described by God himself as being blameless and upright, and yet all this shit happens to him. This guy is blameless and upright, even God admits it, and then bad shit happens to him.
Well, bad shit really doesn't happen to him,
this
right?
Is good.
This
Listen.
is why I don't... It's God essentially giving Satan license to do bad shit to Job, just to
That's
prove
what makes
to
it
Satan
Yep.
that this is a guy who's pure, and his righteousness is not just based in all the bounty that he has. 3,000 camels, 500
So listen,
oxen.
how fucked up is that, right?
Donkeys,
Bad shit
and
happens
a large number of
to
servants.
people, to everyone.
Should we just go through the plot first?
As he says,
It's
given
not a big- it's
license
not
for
a
Satan
complicated plot,
to
but-
deliberately fuck with them, kill his
So
children.
God is
It's
having
sick.
this little dispute
Oh,
with
well, be
Satan.
quiet for a second.
It's interesting that there's just Satan. I don't associate Satan so much with the Hebrew Bible, but apparently he comes up a couple times. This is probably the most.
That's true.
prominent
Satan's
one.
not.
Yeah, and it's not in
The Hebrew Bible, they don't really have,
fleshed out
well, they-
theology of a devil.
They don't have
Satan
an
here
afterlife.
really isn't the devil for the author. It's the word means adversary, but because they say the adversary, usually that word would get translated as just adversary. But because they put the article of the adversary, it gets translated as Satan. And it seems as if what that person is just somebody who's working for God, and his job is to like be a prosecuting attorney, right? Like it's not, so it's clearly not the devil.
And they're just. It seems like they are just talking. There's no there's nothing at stake here. But he's being prosecuted. Look at my servant Job. No one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And Satan's like, well, yeah, because you're God and you bestow all this great stuff on him.
Yeah.
And he says, all right, take it all away, but don't hurt Job. But you can do essentially whatever you want besides that.
Sounds crazy, doesn't
Wipes
it?
out
Can you
all
imagine?
his property and
Crazy
kills
book.
all his sons and daughters. And still Job says, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Already my hackles are raised by this. Like,
Yep.
Job is saying, yeah, well, I didn't get born with all these children, and now I'm not going to die, so, like, everything's okay, you know, and he's not charging God. So then Satan says, well, yeah, but he still has his health.
Yeah, it's like you haven't touched him. Satan says, skin for skin, a man will give all he has for his own life. But stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face.
Wow.
And that's when the Lord says, all right, fine.
He said, he's in your hands, but you must spare his life. You can do anything you want except kill him.
Right.
It's like the opposite of the giving tree, essentially.
It's just craziness,
The taking.
right?
The taking tree.
So then he's now just covered in sores and an outcast and an
Unbelievable.
object of ridicule and contempt in his...
He's scratching himself with a broken piece of pottery.
Yeah.
He's
cutting him.
He's in ashes. He's cutting himself. And his wife is super supportive. I love Job's wife says, are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die.
I think she's more saying... I like to interpret that as, like, this is fucked up. Like, this is a fucked up situation. Just admit it. You know, just curse God because he has screwed us over. She's an interesting character because she gets to live. She's the only one that gets to live throughout all of this. But she doesn't play much of a role.
Maybe that was part of the punishment.
So then he
These
has
guys are
three
great,
friends
aren't they?
that come, and at first they seem supportive. They sleep with him and stay with him for 7 days and 7 nights. But then when Job starts complaining about his fate and challenging God, they launch into...
Lower this. I'm actually
There's
relaxing here.
3 of them, and all but one of them
Have my legs
does
out.
3 speeches.
I'm gonna take this off.
No, all 3 of them do. So there's a cycle. There's Job, one friend, Job, other friend, Job,
Nice night.
third friend, and they do that
Don't mind
3
me.
times.
But I don't think they do. I think the last one, who is Zophar,
Oh, yeah, he never gets the final.
he never gets
That's
his
right.
final
Yeah.
speech because Job has finally just convinced him that no, it's true. Like, I'm blame. Yeah, and the speeches are interesting because sometimes they're mean. Sometimes it's like Job and the characters and his friends they're talking past each other.
there's brilliant sarcasm. I mean, it's beautiful. A lot of it is beautiful, and then a lot of it is just like digs. They're just digging.
I know.
This is the first one.
It's crazy.
Eliphaz the Temanite. Consider now who, being innocent, has ever perished. Where were the upright ever destroyed? This is, in just posing that question to him, without having any evidence that his kids had sinned, it seems like a direct challenge to the virtue of his children, where Eliphaz has no real reason to think that they were non-virtuous, certainly not sufficiently to deserve what happened to them.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not. For some reason here, it feels more like Job's kids dying is just one of the ways in which he was punished. Like, there's not much discussion about whether.
Want to lower this some more?
You have like slaves,
some really slouching
kids. That's the different levels of how
that's
they're
better,
gonna
right?
Fuck with Job, and then finally him, his body. And so I don't think they give too much. It's because the attitude of the book at the end is that they just replace his kids.
Yeah. And everything's fine.
Everything's cool.
I think
it's so preposterous.
Maybe.
Sorry, I killed your kids.
Offended by that, or you could just.
Here's some new ones. You happy now?
The kids themselves seem like.
Can you imagine? It's so sick.
Exactly.
And if you lose 1,000 oxen, you get 2,000 oxen. You get the same number of kids, but.
Can you imagine people actually deriving any sort of comfort from this? Just the mindset of
I don't want to
crazy
go through all
Christians,
the speeches in too much detail, but
what suffices to say is that Job is getting sort of increasingly defensive, and his friends seem to be increasingly. You even get the sense that first time that they can't believe that Job is saying this stuff about God. And Job is
what an interesting book, right?
More and more, I think, bold in saying, like, no, like, at least God could at least talk to me. That way I could defend myself. Like, even if he told me that anything, like, I would at least have an answer from God and I could die, and that would be fine. If you're not going to do that, God, just kill me, right? Like, because this life is not a life worth living. And a lot of the language I was reading is sort of legal, where Job feels unfairly judged and he wants a fair trial.
Exactly. That's let me go before I want to present my evidence, and I want you to give me exhibit A, B, and C of where I've sinned, and I don't believe you can do it. I don't think you have the evidence. I think this is I am being framed essentially by God. I'm being framed by God, and you're railroading.
But
a couple of things sort of stuck out in all the speeches. The first is that they don't seem to be on the same page, not just in terms of God's justice, but even in the ways that they're responding to each other. They take digs at each other, but when one of them is talking about how God must have punished Job because he wasn't good enough to the poor, or he turned people away who were needy, Job will launch into how the wicked people flourish, and then only in a later response will he respond to the accusation that he must have done something wrong.
I think everyone
they're certainly not understanding each other.
Has
it seems as if
I don't want to talk over
no growth in the argument. I don't know how to say it, but the argument doesn't.
Let me just pause this for a second. So, I mean, I went through that myself. When I got out of the hospital and I had this NDE, I thought I was a terrible person. I've talked about this in earlier videos, and it's like, why am I suffering like this? What have I done to deserve this? And I went through my whole life, and at the time, like, I guess I feel like I'm a good person. I'm a pretty mellow guy. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a serial killer. You know, I've never harmed anyone in my life. I've done video recordings on this, but for some reason, I had like this feeling that maybe I'm not such a good person. And I did a video on Catholic guilt. So I guess Job was kind of hinting at that. And it's like how the wicked flourish in this. Okay, so let me continue. How awesome is this? The book of Job. Wow. Okay, ready? Up. I got to go back to this page. Up. That wants Face ID. See, I just look at. There we go.
Point has been made. Point has been refuted. Right. But it's like one of our worst episodes, or one of our normal episodes, where you and I...
Exactly, where one of us is saying something...
Continue listening. I'm just going to step away for a minute. I'm keeping this on. I'll be back in 1 minute.
The other person has,
right. But a charitable way to look at this is that the friends are all ignoring Job's pleas because they can't believe that Job isn't just admitting that he's probably did some bad shit. And it doesn't matter what Job says. They're like almost just independent. They've prepared their arguments, and their arguments are subtly different. One of them is nailing continuously saying, Job, you must have done something bad. Another one is saying, who are you to even question? Like, you don't know what God knows, right? Like, so they're different.
And then they also they tell him not to worry. Don't worry. The wicked will be punished. Like, things will turn out okay for you. He's like, well, I have sores all over my body, and all my kids are dead, and all my oxen are gone. But and Job keeps imploring them, like, look, I'm not lying to you. Why would I lie to you? Why would I lie to God? And stop. It's sort of like a bad dream almost. They keep making these long speeches to him and not really listening to what he's saying in response to it. This is like one of the most torturous aspects of the text is just him being like, are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me with all this?
Exactly. I just forgot, I haven't read this in a long time. I just forgot this frustration that Job has with his friends, where he's directly saying, so, by the way, we read the New International Version, if anybody's curious. One of my favorite is Job opens up at chapter 26, he says, how you have helped the powerless, how you have saved the arm that is feeble, what advice you have offered to one without wisdom, and what great insight you have displayed. And it's just dripping with sarcasm, and I don't think I'd ever read something like that in the Bible.
Yeah. And then God is going to be even more sarcastic when he comes back into the picture.
Isn't that crazy? Like the sarcasm, from God.
His responses have been getting progressively longer.
Yeah. So God is a wise ass. By the way, I just got put kratom in my mouth. That's what you're seeing here.
And this is his longest speech by far. Job's.
The creator of the universe is a wise ass. It's a Howard Stern.
And it shuts them up. Like, it's the last speech.
Yeah.
Starting at chapter 26. They're all like, okay, we're out of arguments here, Yeah. And I don't know if they're giving up, or if you get the sense that they're giving up, that they've kind of like, I don't know what to say. I like that Job, this is the sort of heroic aspect of Job, where he's like, I'm not giving up. I'm not pretending that I sinned. I refuse to do that. I'm maintaining my integrity. And you can say what you want, but I'm not going to give in. I'm not going to, at least for now.
This is one of the reasons it's so important to buy the very beginning part where God himself admits that Job is blameless, because or else I would be like, come on, Job, you must have done something. Right? Like,
interesting.
Haven't you read the research on cognitive biases?
Exactly.
How we rationalize our own behavior.
See, they're joking around because
other kid comes in.
They do
shows up.
He's very mad at the three
friends for he's a social psychologist, and they talk about
continuing to pontificate
bias and
against Job, and then launches into a speech of his own. This is a very strange part of it, because he spends like 2 chapters just saying that he is about to give a speech.
Yeah, and that he's younger than them, and like, I'm just a caveman. He's like,
yeah, I mean, he's definitely virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling.
Yeah.
Aren't they great?
Job's friends have actually done a bad job with their arguments, right? He's like, they got it wrong, like, and they quit too early.
And then he goes on and gives pretty much the same arguments that they did. Except that he also says, and you've rebelled against God, and that's a sin. But
and there is a subtlety that there's a subtlety to what Elihu is saying, which is, up until now, the question really has been, we're all assuming that God is just, we're all assuming that he would punish bad people and not punish good people or reward good people. And so Job's suffering must be a result of the sin, because or else it would violate our assumption that God is just. He was saying, maybe your suffering is actually your suffering is for a reason, and that reason is to change you, to actually, like, there is some point to your suffering. Your suffering might actually cleanse you. It might actually make you a better person. And he's the only one to really give that that kind of defense of suffering.
So where do you see this?
Let me find it. I highlighted it on.
Because I get a lot of, so in 34, he repays a man for what he has done. He brings upon him what his conduct deserves. It is unthinkable that God would do wrong, that the Almighty would preserve justice. This is just echoing what the three friends were saying in some form.
So he said in I think that it was in verse 15, chapter 36, but those who suffer, he delivers in their suffering. He speaks to them in their affliction. So he's trying to say that God is communicating through
slouching
suffering.
a bit.
Where is this? Chapter 36?
Verse
15.
Yeah.
The godless in heart harbor resentment, even when
It's
he fetters
unsightly,
them,
isn't
they
it?
do
This
not cry
amount,
for
but
help. They
whatever.
die in their youth.
So he's saying the godless die, but the people who suffer like you're suffering, he is afflicting you in order to change you.
But I guess, it's change for what? Like, he didn't need to be changed, did he?
I don't think it's a good argument.
Yeah.
It's subtly different, but
But you're right. It's subtly different, and then he also gives an element that ties together all of these speeches, including God's, which is to come, that where he says, "How great is God beyond our understanding? The number of his years is past finding out. Who can understand how he spreads out the clouds, how he thunders?" It's like, this is just beyond our comprehension. We have to assume that he is just, because he couldn't govern the earth if he wasn't just. Like, you almost have to take that as an axiom.
Yeah.
Is what he's saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is kind of one of the, like the Euthyphro dilemma. It's like, if God is doing it, it is just by definition.
Right. And
Crazy,
there is a lot of the, including in God's speech, the you don't know, you know, you don't know me.
But that's what's fascinating, is that in this case, the reader does kind of know. A lot of these arguments are speaking to, we have no idea what God's ultimate plan is. But in this case, the reader does, even if the characters don't. And it just doesn't seem like one of this, it all fits together in this beautiful best of all possible worlds thing. It's kind of like he proved a point to Satan that he didn't need to prove, because Satan's not that big a deal in the Old Testament. And
right. Yeah, no. In fact, it's probably like written or told as one of God's angels who is in charge of sort of pointing out interesting things on earth, right?
And not only that, he didn't prove the point, because Job did start to complain once he had the point.
I know, right?
So, he didn't curse God and die, though. He didn't
curse
God. He did start to complain.
I think he's hanging on that. He's just right on that edge. He's like, I gotta know, man, because I don't think a good God would do this.
Right.
So, tell me, who's gonna tell me what's going on here? I think this is why it's just, for some people, borders on blasphemy, because he's continuously pushing, to ask what God is doing, and in a way that, even I, in my religious upbringing, there's a point where you are just told, "Don't worry, God knows." And in God's wisdom, He knows.
You hear that all the time.
Yesterday, I saw a very sad tweet. I don't know, somebody tweeted out that they had gone to their doctor with their pregnant spouse, and that there was no heartbeat. And he said in that tweet, "Pray for me and my wife." And in my timeline, somehow a whole lot. This got retweeted, and there were a whole lot of responses. And, it was one of those cases of a very nice, the good part of Twitter coming out to support him. But the amount of people who said, because this was largely religious, group of responders, the amount of people who just said, well, we don't know why God does this, but we have to trust he is good. We know he's good. We already know he's good. So this must somehow fit in. We just don't know. We humans can't.
I don't understand that line of reason,
which is one of the most popular responses.
I know, and I don't get that at all.
If you had independent reason to believe in the goodness of God, would be
it just seems like a cop-out.
Because we don't know. We have a very limited perspective.
I've heard that so many.
Our little pea-brained human-sized understanding of the whole universe. And God will pound this into Job.
But the thing is too that there is an underlying assumption throughout the whole thing that that at least God is doing it to Job, and nobody's really questioning that. Everybody understands that God is doing it, and even if it's it's allowing in a very active way.
Allowing in a very active way.
What you don't see is an answer well, God set the world in motion, he doesn't really care, because he is described as a personal God who is caring about Job. He's talking about Job up in heaven, right? So he could change things.
Yeah, no, and in fact, another thing.
Do not read this book if you're sick or you're struggling with evil. This is not the book to read.
Free will defense, which is God had to give humans free will, and once you give humans free will, a lot of bad shit can happen. And if
you shouldn't have given those Chaldeans free will.
If God, exactly. If God, but on balance, it's better to have free will and have bad stuff happen than to not have free will.
That's the argument.
There's none of that. There's not even any.
None of that.
That's the problem. There's none of that, though.
Here. This is clearly God doing it. And
let me just pause this for 1 second.
There's no sense in which...
I actually did a video recording on Plantinga. I hate that guy, Alvin Plantinga. He's a piece of shit. But his whole argument is, his whole thing is the problem of evil, Theodicy. And he says, well, all right, your kid has leukemia and 9 million children die before the age of 5 in terror and agony. But, free will's everything. And that's kind of his thing. And I think it's a bunch of bullshit. And it's fucking ruthless and heartless on Plantinga's part to think that way. But that's some of these Christian apologists will have that free will thing. But there's nothing here. I mean, God is actively, So let me continue on. That's a good point they made right here. Facial ID. Here we go.
He could have not done it, or he could have prevented it, but chose not to preserve free will. There's none of that here.
Right, and at the heart of it is that all Job's decisions have presumably been of the sort that would never lead to these consequences.
Yeah.
Right?
Although those Chaldeans.
God just used them in there.
And this is a big debate, and with Pharaoh's hardened heart that we've talked about.
Yeah.
But here it really is that the whole free will issue is just not an issue in the book of Job, at least as far as I can tell. So before we get to God, so it goes from Elihu to God breaking in. What is strange about this Elihu speech? He comes out of nowhere. He's younger. He gives this long preamble as to why he's going to talk. He maybe adds some element to the argument. It doesn't seem that profound. And then God kind of interrupts him, and he's never heard from again. It's like he wasn't in the text. Because the other friends are part of the plot for the rest of it, but he's just gone. It just kind of came in and came out.
Yeah, there are some, when I was reading about the authorship, I think that people tend to believe that the Elihu speech was added by other people, because if you just leave it where Job shuts everybody up, it really does seem like he won the argument, and the thought is that maybe the Elihu part was added after this to make it slightly less anti-God. Because, as you say, it's completely out of the blue. There's another thing
that
that's
is
out
so
of the blue.
interesting.
When you were talking about Job's super long speech, in the middle of that, chapter 28, there is that chapter is just sort of a little speech about wisdom that doesn't seem to be coming from Job. It seems to be coming from the author, and people think that might have been added sort of in the middle. Where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? Man does not comprehend its worth. It cannot be found in the land of the living. And then chapter 29 says, Job continued his discourse. And so it seems as if this book has been kind of put together with a few different...
and what's interesting about that insertion, if it is an insertion, there are other places throughout the text, this was something that stood out to me, where Job was clearly saying...
I'm growing a beard for the winter
once
time.
You're dead, you're dead.
Right? I could see it in my...
There's no real suggestion of an afterlife.
Absolutely, and there's the word, I don't know how to pronounce it, Sheol, which is the Hebrew for just like where the dead go, you know, like a place of non-existence. Yeah. And there is no, right, because that would be another solution to the problem of evil, that, well, you will get your reward in heaven, and that it will be punished. And
exactly.
This seems
There's
to be
no
before
hell
that view was adopted. So
in
we
the Old
have
Testament.
Actually a
Do you know
very
that?
old,
That's a New Testament thing.
Worldview that it's before there is a devil, like an evil adversary of God, like before that's...
Let me just pause this for a second, because this is really very interesting. So when I was struggling with my thing, so I had my NDE, and at the time I thought it was a curse. Now I think it was a blessing. I thought I got a glimpse of the afterlife, and I've never been happier in my life. I'm so happy that this happened to me, but I was confused. And I thought, like, am I condemned? Am I going to hell? Like, what is this? You know, I saw, not to go into my NDE again, but I saw eternal paradise, and it was very confusing to me. And I was talking to my doctor, my primary, and I was scared. I'm like, I don't know. Is this hell? And he goes, listen, I know. He thought it was just what happened to me was some sort of reaction to, I don't know, anesthesia. I don't know what it was, but you know, he's a clinician, and he's looking at the biology. But then he said, you know, I am Jewish, and fortunately, we don't have hell. We don't have it hell. There is no Satan. I know you Christians are like Satan and all that. He goes, we don't have to worry about that. So that was interesting. Actually, it had given me some comfort at the time. Okay. So let me continue on.
Was believing in an afterlife or in a God that rewarded it. So there's nothing. So like he's like, I know when I die, I'm going into the ground.
But then in 28, doesn't it, what you read?
Where?
But where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? Man does not comprehend its worth. It cannot be found in the land of the living.
I think that's just saying that, like, that it can't be found on, like, amongst humans. But,
okay. Yeah, that's probably right. You know, one of the things I was thinking, we can talk about this when we just sort of sum up, but this reminds me more of the kind of Homeric gods. You know, a god that gets challenged, a god that can be kind of petty and sarcastic and...
petty and sarcastic,
and wants to prove
right?
a point to another god or a lesser being. This has the... You know, like if you're talking about Zeus, you know, Satan being, you know, one of the lesser gods, Hermes or whatever,
like a demigod, or
this has more of that feel where the god is a character, and it's not totally clear that he's just. And I think this text. Yeah. It doesn't surprise me that you say that people thought it was blasphemous, because there's no tidy resolution.
Let me pause this for a second.
That comes to this.
So I am mindful of the space. I've been talking or having this for 39 minutes and 35 seconds, and I see that the red light is blinking. I would hate to have to do this all over again after this much time. If it just cuts out, and I don't think it will, I just freed up some storage space. And I've never gone this long. So I just want to just let people know, if it just somehow stops abruptly, that's what happened here on Tabor Talk. I'd run out of storage space. But let's continue on, and hopefully we can make it to the end. This is quite long. There's another 30 minutes. Okay, so let me continue. I may do a part two, too. We'll play it by ear. How's that? Facial ID. Isn't the phone great? Facial ID. Ready?
There's not at all, and it makes me just sort of puzzled as to how it got in. But what is clear, though, is the way they speak of God is that he is for them the ultimate God, right? He is the creator of everything. He says the Almighty is beyond our reach and exalted in power, and his justice and great righteousness he does not oppress. So they're assuming that there is this, single, just, omnipotent God.
No, that's right. I don't mean to suggest that it's like a polytheistic text, but more that it reminds me more of a kind of a God who can not just challenged by a human, but that the reader is supposed to wonder, well, what the hell is going on here? Why is God acting this way? Should we trust that God is just? What reason do we have for doing that? And it's almost intentionally prompting us to raise those questions in the way that I feel like the Homeric texts do, and that maybe the New Testament, from what I've read of it, definitely does.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that there is, in the beginning, in the preamble, where it's like God, just God almost having like a friendly bet with another angel.
Yeah.
It seems capricious. It seems like the way gods would play with humans.
Fucking with
it. So even though Job and his friends view God as this omnipotent, awesome, singular, guy in the sky, he's not acting that way. And I'm not deceiving Job, but like actively not telling him anything about the first part when it comes to answer him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so let's talk about his answer. So he comes in. The last thing, how do you pronounce it? Elihu.
Yeah.
He says, the Almighty is beyond our reach and exalted in power, and his justice and great righteousness he does not oppress. Therefore men revere him, for does he not have regard for all the wise in heart? And then it really is like this speech never happened. Then the Lord answered Job out of the story.
Right.
It's like Job hasn't been talking for 5 chapters. So how is he?
It's like Ecclesiastes when they add something at the end. It's like,
yeah, and then I don't know. You want to describe his speech?
I want to just say that, like, the first time I remember being a kid and reading Job and getting to this part. So you're like, okay, all of this, like, it's gone on for too long. I think we haven't talked about the language. I think the language is beautiful, but it's gone on for these 3 cycles of repeating the same thing, and you're ready for an answer. You're like, oh, sweet. Like, I remember actually thinking, sweet, God's going to actually explain it.
Yeah.
And then the Lord answers Job out of the storm, or in some translations, the whirlwind. And you know what God's answer is? He just changes the subject. God changes the subject and never answers, right? He says, the first part is just saying, like, you don't know. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me, do you understand? Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. He's being a sarcastic prick. He's like,
exactly. God's being a sarcastic prick.
I'm fascinated. I want to hear you describe creating the earth.
Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place?
It's just insane.
Sorry, Job, I didn't know.
And obviously, this is written by man, okay? But that's what makes it.
You were already born. You lived so many years.
So weird about human beings.
And Job says, I haven't lived that many years, and don't call me Shirley.
Right. So. But I wonder if these Christians read this. What are they thinking?
There's a lot of language here that you realize, oh, that came from Job, like the book of Job.
Oh, totally.
Stuff we say all the time.
Yeah. And it's like a rap battle almost, how he's talking about how powerful he is and how powerless Job is.
You're right. It's like a big Willieism. It's like it's just big Willie rap.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
That's insane, right?
It's just braggadocious.
I don't want to keep talking over this, but it's just like, how do
it's like
Christians
it's kind of
have they read this book? I mean, how do you reconcile this?
I don't want to state that it has some real power. What God is saying in the poetry and in all the ways that it's describing.
It's important, though. It's an important book. I mean, it's totally ridiculous, but
and continues to do for the universe and the world, but
he's talking a lot about animals.
Hey, did you make the earth? Can you imagine that?
And then he goes on to talk more about animals.
So
One of the things that I came across was that, maybe what God is doing here is saying there is so much more in the world and in the universe than just you, Job. Like I'm worried about the seas and like the creatures of land, and like I have to tame the ox and I have to show the lions, how to
like you.
So you could
I got bigger things
to
do.
As don't think that you're the focus of all of my activities.
But then he is, right?
But it's certainly not explicit, and it doesn't feel satisfying.
But also, that's not true, because he was the focus.
Exactly.
He specifically did this to Job to prove a point to Satan. So he can say, I have all this other stuff to attend to. I can't worry about like what Job is feeling. But like, no,
people believe in this. Like they take this shit literally, which is scary.
Allow Satan to do all this stuff to Job.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like he is a God who is. You could sort of pretend to ignore that first part. I mean, the first part has to be said because of the righteousness of Job has to be firmly planted. But really, the rest of the story is not at all. It's not connected to that initial thing at all. Like it's just like,
why do you say that?
Even God forgets.
Oh, I see. Yeah, even God forgets that. No, actually, he did do this to Job.
Yeah, he's like, oh shit, that's right. Satan, I had told him.
Oh no, I mean, there's a way of reading the ending where he does kind of come to that realization. But I guess we'll get to that. So, but there's a couple things where he says, like, brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me to justify yourself? Yeah, exactly. Where, in this case, he would have a right to, by God's own admission in those first two prose things. Then he goes back to, can you pull in the Leviathan with a fishhook, or tie down his tongue with a rope? Can you pull a cord through his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Can you make a pet of him like a bird, or put him on a leash for your girls?
Yeah, and
crazy.
The behemoth. It's interesting that he talks about these creatures. Some like the behemoth. Some people think it's just a hippopotamus, and the Leviathan is like a alligator.
But so Job like he makes Job answer him, and Job's like, no, I'm sorry, you're right, I shouldn't have spoke. And then he makes him answer again after telling Job how powerful he is.
Yeah, his very first answer is super short, right? Uncharacteristic of Job. He says, I am unworthy, how can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer twice. I will say no more. And so he's just basically just been shut up. And I don't know, when reading it, whether this indicates that Job was satisfied with what God was saying. At parts earlier on, Job is saying, like, all I want is for God to come and talk to me. Like, I just want that audience with God. And maybe he didn't care what he said. He just wanted God to, like, show up and actually have the guts to show his face.
Yeah.
And,
Tell me about it.
Testify.
Yep.
He wanted his day in court, as you said. But then, so chapter 42, this is very puzzling to me. So Job replies to the Lord, like I know that you can do all things. No plan of yours can be thwarted. You asked, who is this that obscures my counsel without knowledge? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. You said, listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears have heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. He is contrite, as you said, and he has, and the Lord has shown himself to Job, which is what he wanted. But then here's the part that I find very puzzling. After the Lord had said these things to Job, he said to
I'm going to step away for another minute.
Eliphaz,
this is great, isn't it?
I am angry with you and your two friends, because you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. Why is he angry with the three friends? Like, what did they say that was wrong, given what the Lord now is saying?
I mean, the only thing that I can think of is that the friends were accusing Job of having acted in some evil way, and he didn't. And so it's weird because he's telling off Job, sort of, by like, you know, who are you to question me? But then he's coming to his defense and saying, like, you guys were talking shit about my boy Job, like, so I'm mad at you.
But also that Job has spoken right. He says, you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. And it's like, wait a minute.
This, Tamler, is why I think this is a sneaky... The answer to the Theodicy is God isn't just.
Right.
I think that's the sneaky part of this book where God is saying, Job was right. He didn't do shit. And guess what? What that means, what is entailed by Job being right, is that God must not be just.
And so that's interesting. I like that. If he's admitting that he's not just, although he's still angry, furious that Job would question his justice, and now wants the friends to sacrifice and Job to pray for them. I mean, it's very paradoxical.
Yeah.
Like if he's telling the friends that he's not just, then why was he so mad that Job was questioning his justice? I suppose it's not technically inconsistent, but it does kind of the
way that I read it is that God is simply his annoyance at Job is to have the hubris to try to understand God's ways, and so he says, like, well, you're not even close to really understanding what I do, but it's true that I did fuck with you.
For no good reason. Yeah.
This is so good, isn't it? You hear I'm getting
not think that Job,
binged
the book
here.
of Job offers
So the
anything
difference in the volume
by way
here.
of a satisfactory answer to the problem of evil.
How good is this, right?
I found. I'll put a link to
Let me
this
just see.
paper, a very, very good paper.
There's
called
about 18
God's
minutes
Answer
left.
to Job, where the author goes through the various defenses of God that people have given,
Some more
trying
chocolate.
to somehow
Yum, yum.
reconcile
Friday night
God's
party.
justice with what's happening in Job. And he concludes that there is no satisfactory answer. He says, I conclude then that when God answers Job, I'm quoting here, he should not be understood as saying, trust me, Job, I have a good reason for afflicting you. If you just hold on to your faith, everything will come right for you in the end. The God who answers Job out of the whirlwind does not offer that kind of reassurance. This God promises nothing, either in this world or the next.
Isn't that something?
And I think that's right.
Volume has come down a little bit because I'm getting
this
text
is a deeply
messages.
wise book because the only real
My
answer
apologies.
to the problem of evil is that we were wrong to expect anything else.
Yes. So, and you know, you could certainly read. I think Ecclesiastes is especially amenable to that kind of reading too.
Ecclesiastes is a great book. The
Doesn't
three
it
wisdom
sort
books:
of
Proverbs,
undercut
Ecclesiastes,
that you have this tidy little, and
and
Job
this
was
with
rewarded.
The
with
wisdom books, right?
Double the property and the same and prettier daughters and 140 more years, and so at least it offers the possibility of Job had to tough this out, And
right, and
it is a great story,
doesn't
though.
it
The
seem like a
literature
little
is amazing.
pastiche to you? Like, I'm going to continue reading.
I love the stuff,
The next paragraph of this paper that I was quoting, it says, "It is true, of course, that Job is rewarded handsomely in the epilogue, receiving double his original wealth, twice the normal lifespan, and an equal number of replacement children. But it does not help us with the interpretation." I know that's I've always wanted, to have a real conversation about the view that, but he says it does not help us with the interpretation.
Hey, Mike, I killed your son, but
response.
here's another
Job was
one.
already fully satisfied.
You happy now?
The appearance of God.
Crazy,
which
right?
contained not a hint of the coming restoration of his fortunes. So, and in any case, Job's restoration looks more like compensation for pointless suffering than like a good that God wanted to achieve through Job's misfortune. It seems as if he won damages, like they settled, and he won damages.
I guess if he won,
isn't that interesting, right?
And God admitted that he was wrong, then what was he so furious about when he was? Is it sort of like if you start yelling at your kid for questioning you,
listen
and
to this,
then you realize that, well, technically the kid is right, your child is right in this instance, but there's no way for your child to have known that, and it's still disrespectful to even question it, but... You
feel a little guilty.
You feel a little guilty, and so I guess I could see that. It's certainly as plausible a way.
I liked how they broke that down, right?
Text together.
All right.
Like trying to make sense of it.
I fucked up. I was a fucking dick.
You could also
all right, here's compensate.
Not even intending to have a coherent message.
Yeah. Well, I think that the discomfort that God's response gives is a good. I like that feeling. You're left with a feeling of questioning more. You're not left like if it had been wrapped up neatly, I don't think it would be considered one of the great books.
No,
right? I think that's true.
And there is this, as you say, like God's speech isn't even admitting that he's wrong. He's not admitting at all that he's not just.
Not at all. Yeah.
And I think that.
And that's fucked up.
You couldn't write that book where God comes in and says, "You're right, I suck." I don't think you can write that.
I mean, the way it's written is that it makes God, which is I find.
Say like, "Don't question me."
So let me just pause this for a second.
But I think it's a wink, wink, nut.
What really is interesting and curious about the Bible is that it's written by man, and you want obviously people to, for lack of a better word or phrase, to buy into this. So it's written in a way that makes God look like a fucking douchebag, like this tyrannical bastard son of a bitch, So I've always, and I've talked to Madeline about this a lot, like, why did they write it? I mean, it's written by man. It's a book that the Bible, we all know this, but whether it's divinely inspired, I don't know. But it is interesting. I mean, there's no other way to really interpret this. This God is a son of a bitch. I mean, just a bastard. A real awful monster, like someone who is sort of like all powerful, and I don't know. I mean, I read this for its literary value. Although let me continue on. Facial ID?
Nudge, nudge. That like Job was right to question.
So this is a Straussian reading of Job. No, it's so amenable to that. An esoteric reading. Like, Ecclesiastes almost flat out just favors that reading. Yeah. Here, it does seem like it's a little more concealed, if that's what it's saying. It's like, you have a right to question. I'm not saying you should do it in every instance, and you may get shouted down if you do, but you have a point, and, and the best you can hope for is a settlement,
Yeah, and Ecclesiastes has the advantage of not having to deal with God.
Right.
it doesn't really deal with God. It's just wisdom about this earth, and it's sort of saying we don't know. This
About
life is a lot
8
of pain,
minutes left.
suffering,
Hold on,
and
right there.
existential
Continue
uncertainty.
listening.
And this is actually bringing God into it. Is like, well, now you have to give. God has to say something. He's a character in your book. What does he say? And I'm just a human being writing this story, and it feels right. It feels as if there is some deep wisdom
I'm reading
there
this
where
again,
the
of course.
human writing this story had to make God just show up in a storm, talk about how amazing he is, and leave Job. And this we haven't talked about. I think that Job is somehow psychologically comforted by God's response in a way that I don't know that I would be, but there is something in Job's attitude that seems to say, like, okay, like I'm at peace with what's happened.
Well, it's sort of like if you email a guy repeatedly trying to get a response to something that you are angry at them for, and then they finally, after years, respond to you, and they completely deny your complaint or deny that they were wrong or whatever. It still feels good that they took the time
Right.
to respond.
Right.
At least he did get to have his appeal heard. Yeah, I agree that he seems psychologically comforted. I was interested in a lot of people looking at this from Job's perspective. People are angry at Job for just giving in the way he does. I don't blame Job really if you see a whirlwind and then God and so I was reading this piece in the New Yorker by Joan Acacella. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And she was talking about Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel was very upset by Job's capitulation, especially in light of the Holocaust, where people were saying about the Jews that they went like lambs to the slaughter. They didn't rebel. They didn't protest. Mm-hmm. They just did it. And she writes that an alter ego in one of his novels never ceased resenting Job, and says that the biblical rebel should never have given in. And then Elie Wiesel, at a certain point, just decided that he hadn't given in. Wiesel says, contrary to the usual reading, Job did not submit when God told him that he must. You can tell, Wiesel says, because in the text that we have, he submitted so fast. He was just pretending. The true ending, Wiesel preferred to believe, was lost. More recently, he changed his mind and settled on the idea that Job merely chose silence, not submission. Job, he wrote, had learned he lived in a world that was cold and cynical, a world without true friends, but one nevertheless in which God seeks to join man in his solitude.
That's great.
That is good.
I think
I'm actually taking some notes here too myself. Again,
it's consistent with what I was reading, and I don't remember
always with my
where,
notepad.
but
Always notes here.
When Job is responding to God, and he says, "Therefore." In this translation, it says, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." That phrase, "I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes," apparently has 3 or 4 possible translations. That this seems to be the sort of most reverent one. Right. The other ones are more like, "I will sit here in the dust and ashes and I am nothing."
Yeah.
And I think that is the experience, like God coming through the storm and Job seeing him with his own eyes is like, let me just read this because I think it says it nicely. The book of Job moves back and forth between these two poles, between the idea of a God who cares about the doings of particular men like Job and the idea of a God who is almost too big, too mysterious, too wholly other for anything like that to make sense. In the experience of the whirlwind, Job is confronted with sheer transcendence. He is reminded of the chasm that lies between creator and creature and forced to take into account the infinite difference between God's point of view and ours. And maybe this just like, he was either intimidated into silence or he was like, well, fine then. Fine. At least you showed up. Right.
Yeah, and at least if I'm going to be friendless and I'm going to have to suffer for no good reason, at least you're willing to show your face and justify
and
yourself, even if I get yelled at, scolded.
Yeah, when I was reading this, I was thinking that
that is interesting, isn't it?
This is sort of one of the only
well,
instances
at least you
where
showed up. How many times have I? We all, right?
Right, because usually you don't get any of that in the stories of the Bible. It's just God was right.
Yeah, I mean, Genesis, I remember Abraham bargaining with God on behalf of the people of Sodom, and God being willing to negotiate. But that's not God with the person that
that's suffering.
Right. Or that will suffer, or that's been sinful, or that hasn't. Yeah.
It's funny when people bargain with God. In Ezekiel, God tells Ezekiel to bake bread, and he gives them a specific recipe.
Listen to this. It's good.
That recipe people make. You can still make bread with that recipe, but in the original recipe, God says to bake it with by using human shit in the fire. And Ezekiel is like, no, I can't do that. That's unclean. He's like, and then God says, okay, fine.
I know. It's so
really
weird, you know, the Bible,
the Old Testament, and
I love it.
I wish I knew more about the kind of the Yahweh version.
It is just bizarre. Like it is bizarre. But that's what makes it so great, you know.
It really is a God that is a lot more interactive and that seems to regret certain things. You know, the flood, and oh God, I really messed this up. Let me start again. And and it's just
and tribal, like, plays favorites. Like he's very tribal. He's like, hey, destroy all of those people. Like,
what an interesting religion, right? Judaism and Christianity.
And just will choose to like one brother over another brother for no real reason. Just because. So, like, I think that Job is great because it kind of brings all of that to a head. It's sort of implicit in the other books where the reader might question it, but here Job is just directly questioning it himself. And I think the thing that makes this such a masterpiece of literature and why we're still talking about it is that opening. As you've said repeatedly, Job's complaint has his real basis in the text, and the text is explicitly making us understand that and never fully responding to it. And that's pretty, like you said, it's almost like God forgot that he did that. I was thinking as you were talking, like, that this is a God who is like, there is that very involved, very tribal Yahweh of the Old Testament, and then there is this mysterious, ethereal, omnipotent, sort of like concerned with the universe God, who seems to, in the book of Job, come down from that, do a little dealing with human beings directly, and then go back up to that whirlwind of the fact maybe that he came down from all that just to talk personally to Job. Even if he forgot, I really do. I think that's the best. It's almost like the flood, and like there are two floods. We're about to do Genesis again in my great books course, so I'll be able to report on this. But
I'll be doing Genesis too, by the way.
live from Babylonia or whatever. But it's almost like he's starting over with Job. It's like, sorry about that. Here's your 10. Here's double the property, and we'll start this over. Pretend this never happened, kind of thing.
Here's some new kids. Sorry, fucking killed your kids.
Well, but the wife is. It's still
crazy shit, right?
That she's still the mother of all these other children. So. Fertility. And weirdly, it says that Job granted the daughters inheritance along with their brothers. Like, goes out of its way to say that, like, Job also treated his daughters equally. Like he wasn't going to for the first round. And apparently it's one of the only texts where the daughters are named but not the sons. Yeah, interesting. And one of them is Jemima. Yeah. That's where that comes from. All right.
Yeah. Is there, we didn't talk about the language too much, and we didn't quote that much, but I just want to say that even though it's long and it's beautiful, there's a lot of just beautiful language here.
Yeah. It's funny, like, I felt this more with Ecclesiastes than I did with Job. And I know this is me that's in the wrong.
They're comparing it with Ecclesiastes. They did Ecclesiastes like 4 months ago.
There's something
I mean, it's part of the book of wisdom, the 3 books.
I didn't
Proverbs,
feel that as much
Ecclesiastes, and
as a lot of people do who have written about it.
I think that maybe it suffers from repetitiveness. And when you're reading, it's 42 chapters. It's not this is a very dense book. And they're saying a lot of the same things. So it's almost just for the sake of the poetic, like they're just repeating a lot. And so it takes way more attention. I still think that whoever is interested in reading this should take time out to appreciate the poetry. And I wish I knew how to appreciate poetry even better than I do, because I don't.
I'm the same way. Dostoevsky was obsessed with this.
Yeah.
It comes up multiple times in Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah, great book.
It is
right. Ivan is like his response to Job is like.
Read that in my early 20s, Brothers.
Like that God is clearly unjust.
Yeah, and I'm not playing ball. I'm not going to be a part of this anymore. And that's something that Dostoevsky, he understood the force of that reply, as well as anybody, but he didn't want to be on board with it, and he tried constantly to give us a satisfying reply to it.
I know. One day we'll talk about Dostoevsky or the Brothers Karamazov, because I always had a sneaking suspicion that Dostoevsky was speaking through Ivan and trying really hard to speak through Alyosha, but Ivan wins, and Dostoevsky knows that Ivan wins.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I don't know how we would do that, but if we could figure out a way to do the Brothers Karamazov maybe over 3 or 4 episodes,
they do a lot of books, classic literature. These guys, very bad wizards.
All
right. Well, join us next time, and you will get the same number of children and
that's their fade out song, the Very Bad Wizards. Let me have this fade out because it's so good. This outro. Love this.
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man. I'm a very good man. Good man.
Very Bad Wizards. Okay. So how awesome was that? Now, this was my longest podcast, Tabor Talk. I'm looking at it's 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 48 seconds, and most of it was the boys here, Tamler and Dave, and I really enjoyed that. I heard that before, and I said, oh, I got to do this. I've been thinking about the book of Job, and I'm so glad I did it. So why don't I end it here, and I'll be talking a lot more. I hope people got some value out of this. I hope you listen to it, and I hope I get a lot of comments. So, okay, good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding. Tabor Talk.